session is called Taking Schoolbox or Learning to the Next Level. And we have presenting Matt Myers from Cedar College and myself from Schoolbox. So first we'll have Matt. Thank you.
So firstly, thanks for having me. My name is Matt Myers. I'm the e-learning coordinator at Cedar College, and the video we all just saw was explaining a little bit about what Cedar College is.
I'll add it in the video later.
We'll add it in the video later. Thank you very much. So the idea was to start a flipped learning presentation with a video, because that's pretty much the whole premise of what we're doing in flipped learning. So I'm not up here to tell you how to teach or how to run your schools or how to tell you how to suck eggs. That's definitely not what I'm here for. We embarked on a bit of a transition in the last 8 months where we decided to head down and jump into flipped learning across our whole school. So this is just, I guess, a bit of a case study about how we did it, what type of flipped learning we use, and how we managed that change. So by all means, I'm no expert, but I'm just going to give you a bit of a case study. For those that aren't aware, I'm going to give you a really quick, hopefully 20-second overview of what flipped learning is and what the flipped classroom model looks like. So the traditional model is that students attend class, you generally write up your lesson plan objective on the whiteboard, you explain to the kids all the information that they need to do. They might get a bit of time to do some deeper thinking and some learning within the classroom, but then there's generally homework that's assigned and you go and complete that outside of classroom, unstructured, with multiple variables of outcomes that can occur and often unsupported. So they might be doing the homework on their own in their room without that added level of support. The flip model, you're not sitting upside down, you're not sort of sitting on the roof or all those sorts of things, which is what some staff have asked me, and why is it flipped? Why is it called flipped? It's changing that model around, so the students complete that prior learning, obviously before class. It might be a reading, a video, an activity, something to give them a bit of an understanding about what you're about to build that knowledge on within the classroom, with the support, with the teacher. So the homework is the thing that is flipped, I guess. It's before the class rather than after the class. The benefit of that is that it gives you more time within class to work on things with the teacher. So it's often described as the sage on the stage, which is what we're witnessing right now, compared to the guide on the side. Now, I hate that term, so I don't like using it, but that's how it's often described. So why did we flip it at Cedar College? So we're a unique school where we don't have one campus, we don't have 2, 3 campuses. We have 40 campuses across Victoria. We are a senior secondary provider with year 11 and 12 students only. The model is that there is one teacher in a venue with 25 students 5 days a week. As I mentioned, it's year 11 and 12. It's a prescriptive curriculum, so we deliver all assessment tasks in all venues. They are all the same. The learning materials and the learning resources can differ, but the tasks are identical. It's a mixture of VCAL and VET in our program. We also decided to flip because at the same time of introducing this, we introduced project-based learning. Our Director of Curriculum will present later this afternoon, I think in the grand hall upstairs, I think the graveyard shift. So he's sitting in the back of the room giving me a smirk at the moment. As I mentioned, we're scattered all over Victoria. So we've got 40 venues. We've got 5. This map here shows the 5 regional venues that we've got in Shepparton, Terrell, Bendigo, Ballarat, Geelong. So holding staff meetings and training can be often difficult as well. These are our metro venues. So again, they're not even remotely close to each other. We've got venues ranging from Geelong to Frankston. So all the way around the bay, we've got venues all over the place. So in part of thinking of going along the flipped learning direction or the path, one of the key factors was maintaining consistency within our classrooms. We want to make sure that students that enrol with Cedar College get the same experience, whether they are in Geelong or Frankston or Shepparton or Terrell. So by giving these flip videos and this learning content, it really maintains some consistency. We can't just walk down the hall and see who's delivering what and maybe suggest that they should be doing it a little bit differently. So how did we flip? There's 2 types of flip, so I've coined them the front flip and the back flip. So the first type of the front flip, which is this, and it often ends up pretty similarly to that as well, we deliver content or information to students. So it's got nothing to do with the tasks, it's all about the content. So We embarked on a journey where we got all of our staff to film videos and film resources for our students, and I'll get into that a little bit later, but the front flip here is all about content. It's got nothing to do with the assessment task. It's all about the information that the student's about to learn. We also introduced each area of study or a subject or a unit with an area of study video. The second type is the backflip. So this is for after class. So this is instructions or flipped instructions, and this is the type of information that students can access the content at any time. So the teacher gets up and explains what they're supposed to do in the next task. The student might be distracted, the student might be listening, the student might be absent. That doesn't mean that they shouldn't have access to those instructions. So we also know that students need to access content and instructions, particularly on a number of occasions. So those students can actually watch this video, rewind, pause it, watch it again, watch it when they're at home. If they were sitting in class and they were, particularly in our setting, they might have been stuffing around with one of their friends at the back of the room. They can then go home and actually access those instructions in a pretty clear and concise way. The beauty of embedding these into Schoolbox is that they can access it on any device as well. So a lot of our students will watch these videos travelling to school on the bus or on the train. So it's responsive and it can go anywhere. So we flipped using Office Mix, and the previous presenter also mentioned Office Mix in his presentation. Now, for those of you that don't know, this is a free add-in to PowerPoint. The reason we chose this is that everyone at some point in their life has used PowerPoint. Everyone's comfortable using PowerPoint. Everyone's sat through presentations that are death by PowerPoint. We recommended this, but it wasn't compulsory. We have staff members that were using Macs, some that would prefer to film on their iPhones, some that would prefer to use other software as well. So we were pretty open to not limit the creativity of our staff. We wanted to give them a tool that they could use, and we went through and upskilled our staff on how to use Office Mix, but we certainly weren't prescriptive, and we certainly didn't make them use Office Mix. That was just a starting point. If they felt comfortable doing something else, go for it. We also provided every staff member with an audio headset. The biggest hurdle that we probably find is the quality of the audio. Some are filming in different locations. Acoustics are great in some, not so great in others. So providing that headset was a bit of a gap fill and trying to equalise that audio across all videos. So how do we manage this change? We're in a fortunate position where, as we're a VCE-aged school, our students finish in mid-November. So we have our staff for a good 4, 5, 6 weeks sometimes at the end of the year, where we can really sink our teeth into new projects and we can really start to deliver on some of the outcomes that we're trying to achieve. So towards the end of last year, we set about trying to get the buy-in to our staff. So we'd already made up our minds, this is where we wanted to go as a leadership team. Getting buy-in from staff is probably the key point in any effective change, as I'm sure you're all aware. So we started that in early November, where we wanted to get the buy-in from staff. After that, it was about training staff and making them feel comfortable with the technology. So that's about using and training staff in Office Mix or any other software that they decided to use. From there, it's about filming, refilming. Some staff discovered that they had some nervous twitches when they present on video. Some staff weren't too happy with how they sounded. Some staff weren't too happy with how they looked. So they would film it, watch it, film it again. From there, phase 4 I've got up here is that's obviously just where we embed it into Schoolbox. So we put all of these videos into our due work components, but we made them self-accessible. So although students are recommended to watch this, and we ask our teachers to drive this flipped learning movement, we're not holding students accountable. If they feel like they don't need to watch the flipped instructions, great. They don't need to watch it to pass the area study or the subject. The key that we found to maximising any buy-in from staff is to avoid the reasons not to change. Now, I'm not sure if you can see that at the back, but these are some probably the most common excuses that you would hear within most schools, and especially within the technology sector. So a couple of my favourites up here are, well, that won't work in my department, or that's not my responsibility. The killer is, we've always done it this way, so why do I now need to go and change the way that I've done things for the last 10, 20, 30 years? Probably the most common excuse that I come across is the old, my students just won't watch it. So my retort to that would be, well, what would you do if they didn't watch, or what would you do if they didn't do their homework? So these types of excuses tend to come from people in this hierarchy. which again probably exists in the majority of all of our schools and all of our organisations. The Director of Onerous Reporting and the Director of Analysis Paralysis ring true in our organisation. So the job of the technology leader or leaders within schools is to prove these people wrong and to prove to them that the change is worthwhile. So the way that we went about that, and again this will be different in every school and in your own schools, is that you need to provide these people with the proof that it does work. So I'm coining a term here that I learned last year at the 2016 Schoolbox conference from Matt Samble in his GIF presentation, and dog fooding, and he mentioned that and I was a bit intrigued by what that meant. So technically we're not dog fooding, so we are not the creators of flipped learning, we are certainly not the inventors of flipped learning or the flipped instruction, but we certainly did use it in-house before we rolled it out to our staff. So in this presentation I'm claiming that we dog fooded. So what we did is we actually got our senior management to film their weekly briefing. So most schools might have a daily or a weekly briefing. We similarly do the same thing. Given that we're out in 40 different locations, that can be a bit of a challenge. So we got our senior management to actually film their weekly briefing and provide that to staff. It was interesting to note the shift in feedback from staff. So when this originally rolled out, people would comment on, or have a look at him, look at his shirt, oh, nice shirt, oh, he's stumbling across his words, oh, he's umming and ahhing, oh, what a waste of time, I don't really want to sit here and watch our principal at the time tell me what's going on this week. It shifted from that pretty quickly to a sense of connectedness and a sense of community amongst our staff. They stopped worrying about what he looked like and what he was, or how he was delivering and the actual content within the video. That shift happened really, really quickly and it was really surprising to note. Another important piece to get staff on board was to explain what flipped learning is not. A lot of staff encounter a lot of fear with change and resistance to change. It was pretty important to us to explain that it's not about replacing them as a teacher and that our school and that our subjects are still very much driven by that student and teacher relationship. So by going through what it is not, it's not an online course, it's not about replacing them, it's not about making their job harder. It really set to alleviate some of that fear within our staff and got a lot more buy-in from staff as well. We then set guidelines for staff. So before, we're in the training phase now, so before we rolled these out and we set off on completing the flipped instructions for tasks and the content-driven videos, we set small tasks where staff just had to get comfortable. It might have been about, I think one of our presentations was about sell us a car, tell us how you would sell a car. So they said about using the flipped technology and the flipped methodology to sell us a car. This is some of the examples. Now, we instruct the staff to smile and try and be positive, but as you can see in the photos up here, they're all very scared of looking at themselves in the camera. So the guidelines are really important to give them something to work for. My final point, now my presentation is going really quickly without all these videos, but my final point is about avoiding change fatigue. So I find this particularly relevant when we're rolling out technology changes within schools, is that to avoid sort of the hands up, I've had enough of this, it's really important to be empathetic in your approach and to be thinking about what other changes are happening for your staff within your school. The buy-in is the main part. So if you can get staff on board, then you're going to have a successful change. You need to communicate the bigger picture to your staff as well and explain why you're doing this. Don't just roll out any technology, not just flipped learning, and just say this is the better way, this is the way that we need to do it, this is the way we're going to do it. If you can empower staff and you can include them in the process, then you're likely to have much more buy-in. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, so for those of you that don't know me, my name is Amy Pearce. I've been working with Schoolbox since November last year, and I'm a teacher. I taught mainly in New South Wales, so for all the New South Wales schools out there, if you need someone to talk to that knows a little bit more about what happens in New South Wales, I'm your person. I also taught overseas for a few years as well. So I taught for about 6 years, then moved to Melbourne from a little country town in New South Wales, and I'm really passionate about education and technology and education. And that's why I'm with Schoolbox. So my presentation is mainly about how to best use components. Now, there will be some people here that will see some of the things I'm suggesting and go, oh, we're already doing it. That is terrific. So some of these things might be a little bit basic, but hopefully you get a little bit out of, getting the best out of component use in Schoolbox. So first off, you will see at the moment some of my colleagues handing around something free. This is just so, you can go away with a positive, oh, Amy's presentation was awesome, I got a free poster. Instead of, oh, it was all right, I got one or two things out of it, well, at least you got something free. It's also bright and colourful. You can put it in somewhere where your staff are hanging around a bit, looking at a wall, put it there. That might give them some inspiration on how to use components. This is also there's a digital copy on our Schoolbox Help site, so you guys can print out, a better quality poster of this if you like. For me, firstly, I just want to explain what does it mean when I'm saying taking components to the next level. Basically, I want you to get your teachers mainly to have less management of whatever they're using, like if it's their class page or their group page. Some of the component choices we see, there's definitely better options so that your teachers don't have to constantly manage their page, because pages can get clogged up quite easily with old things, things that aren't relevant anymore. So hopefully you can get some tips out of the things I'm going to show you today. Also, at a bare minimum, hopefully you get a giggle, as a bare minimum. So let's see what I can do. First off, beginner level. So it will be beginner level and next level. The beginner level, I'm talking about group and class members. Most classes and groups will have like a class list or a group manager component on them. But if you have never heard of these things before, this is what I'm talking about. So the reason we use sometimes a text box, especially in terms of contacting a teacher or contacting a coach, sometimes we see people using the text box and just filling in the contact details of people so that it's there static on the page. However, by using the class list or the group members components, it's definitely a better option because it looks a little bit better. It's also dragging the information from the system. You don't have to type it all in or put a picture up. If you click on any of those profiles, it will come up with more details for that person, and depending on how you set it up in your school, it should have at least an email address that students, if they're looking for their contact details for their teacher, if you've got the class teacher component on there, they can click on the teacher and they can send them an email. So if anyone isn't using that as a bare minimum on their class pages or their group pages, definitely something that might be handy for you. Next up, we have sharing images on your pages. So again, what we mainly see is the text box. You're going to hear me keep saying, oh, the text box. It is the most versatile component that we have, and a lot of people use this text box component to display images. I even do it every now and then. However, if you really want to get the best out of displaying images, I suggest using the tiles component or even the image slideshow component. The reason for this is if you can see the purple highlight, it gives you some size ratios, and it just better displays and I guess keeps a consistency with the images that you're displaying. So just as a tip, We see constantly like teachers who maybe aren't as comfortable at using different components. The tiles or the image slideshow component should definitely be used for any images. Next up, at a beginner level, sharing your coursework and any unit information. Again, I'm hoping this is kind of something you're already doing at the next level. Sometimes we see teachers just kind of putting some dot points and this is what the units are for this subject, these are the major assessments, and that's fine. I mean, I think that's good to at least have that on your class pages. However, really the best way to show that information is through the course outline. The reason for this is everything on this component is clickable. So if you have your unit pages set up and they click on that unit, so if it's like that unit 3, it will take them directly to the unit page. And if it's got a lot of information on it, like you've got your unit resources on it, that's an easy link the students can make with unit resources. Same with the learning activities. So all the learning activities are clickable, and that's obviously going to have more detail of the learning activity that they have to do, whether it's a task or a due work. And again, with the course outline, what's great about it is the ability to check off. The student can check if they've done the task, or it's quite visible what's been completed. So definitely, I would highly recommend having all teachers at least try using the course outline more. Next up, at a beginner level, sharing stories and notices. Definitely as a teacher, I know if you think about notices like reminders for students to bring something in, or sharing what a student has done in the class or the group. What you can do is obviously use the text box, and you can have that as a static component. And for example, there, please bring your permission slips. So that's fine. We see that all the time. That's great. But the best way to do it is to use the calendar component. The reason for this is twofold. One, you can set publish and expiry dates. So the content automatically appears or disappears on the class page or the group page. So I don't have to worry about 6 months later cleaning up a text box that I put up there for them to bring in their permission slip. So that's one reason you should be using the calendar component on class pages or group pages. The other reason is because it will land in the student's calendar, their personal calendar. So again, you shouldn't need to remind them because it's coming up on their dashboard, hopefully, if they've got the calendar component on their dashboard. So definitely another great one for class pages or group pages is the calendar component. And next we have sharing. This is quite similar. Any important events that are going on with a group or a class. We do see a lot of Word or PDF documents. I guess that goes back to the traditional way of having these documents on an A4 piece of paper because they were printed out and they were sent out. So we see it all the time, and I can understand why people do it because it would take a lot of time to transfer that information into Schoolbox. But again, if you are trying to share information, skip through that. The best way is to use the calendar component, and also with the calendar component you've got the ability to RSVP, so it will show up in their personal calendar and they'll get notified about it. At the next beginner level, using external surveys. As a teacher, I use these quite a bit, mainly to find out like how students were feeling about maybe a certain topic or about the subject, trying to gauge what they already knew about things it's definitely something people do a lot. And when you put in a Google search of Survey Maker, you get 16 million hits. I know I've probably created 5 or so accounts of Survey Maker websites to try and find the right survey to use in a classroom environment. But if you haven't already, Schoolbox already has a survey and forms component in it. This is great because it doesn't mean that the teacher has to create an account, the student has to create an account in an external website. They can just put it onto the class page or the group page. It collates the results and it puts it into colourful graphs as well. So definitely if you're not using the survey component, you can scrap the use of using external websites and having to log in and gather data that way. Next one. This is my favourite one. This is the last one I've got to show you. Displaying external web content. So normally in Schoolbox you can just grab the website link and add that to the links component. And a lot of teachers use this to kind of control what websites students are using for their research or whatever it may be. However, instead of having them open up a new tab or redirect them from Schoolbox, another option is to actually embed that website into either the task, or you can actually do it on the class page itself. This example here is a task, and within the text box component, you can embed the website. So this is the Globe Theatre website. So I've just grabbed their link, put it into the text box. It'll automatically try and embed it, and they don't have to go anywhere. They just open that task, and they can muck around with the actual website within the task and then tick off once they've done it, okay, instead of having to be redirected to another website. So that might be an option as well for teachers. But that's kind of it for me. I'm nice and short for you guys because I don't want you to miss out on any lunch. I want you to get to the front of the lunch line. I haven't actually talked about the specifics about actually completing things like embedding. However, on the bottom of this screen here, I've got the help doc, homepage 1615. That actually will give you more detail about any of those options, and it'll give you links to the instructions on how to do any of this as well. Definitely if you can go back and see what teachers are doing now and maybe have a look at the class pages and the group pages and see if any of the things I've brought up with you today, they may help with the management of those pages.